Boom. We are live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. Pretty exciting. Nice to see this strong bounce off the VPVR, and without any wicks below it, really. Again, I'm hoping that we see a bit of a larger volume and supply signal come in, but haven't seen it yet. If you're new to the channel, remember to subscribe. Helps us grow, which we're trying to do. But we're going to dive in and take a look at Bitcoin, where we've been always kind of keeping an eye on here. At least the last 2 weeks, this $40,000 area, specifically because of the point of control, which will be highlighted here by the red bar that goes around right through the center. Now, what's fun is we have a bunch of things that kind of confirm this thesis of a potential reversal pattern. I've been looking at this with the 3 peaks and a domed house. Again, the important part is that when this pattern ends, it goes into very strong uptrends. So we've been making examples. Here is the S&P 500. If we zoom in here, what that looks like between 1998 effectively and 2010 was highlighted by points 10 and 28. Again, the important parts here. These are kind of the finishing sentiments and how to measure where they approximately land. So with point 28 here, it was actually quite a bit lower than the original point 10 on the S&P 500 again. So the reason to believe that there could be some bit of a dip for some existential tragedy. People usually become very emotional in those sentiments. But more importantly, regardless of how low it goes, the idea here, I think that is the most prominent is, ladies and gentlemen, how high it goes afterwards. So one of the ones we found, and we had used this as an example over the last few years for a type of pattern throughout a accumulation range that would have confused me and why I thought it would have been very bearish. But what's interesting, again, is that these reversal patterns are just that. They're reversal patterns. So here, just yesterday, we were going over Tesla and Tesla's current relationship to the 3 peaks and a domed house, which we see here. Again, I started to draw this in peak 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can see as we go over into point 28, we return back to around approximately point 10, which we did get. Now, again, we could make some conjecture around which point is 10. This is like, again, matching footprints or that like tree bark. All the pine trees have the same bark, more or less. But if you look at the pine tree close enough, obviously it is infinitely different than the next pine tree. So this is a very similar structure and the way nature kind of flows off the back of things. So this beautiful trend here, which is a very strong reversal trend, would have confused me, and I would have thought that these were actually distribution, that these are bearish patterns in my early Wyckoff study days. I think a lot of people focus on the micro or myopic thinking. They're charting in 3-day time frames. In 3-minute to 15-minute time frames. Something. This is all done on the 3-day. So we're noticing trends that take months to evolve here, and the same with Bitcoin. We're actually looking at this on the daily to get this 3 peak and a dome house. So what's fun when we look at Tesla and we ask ourselves, well, again, not how low did it go for 0.28, because that's not the relevant function, but how much higher did it go afterwards? And look at Tesla. After you completed that, this like almost what appears to be a staggered reaccumulation or a reaccumulation after decline, where you have the top section of the reaccumulation taking place above the box of the trading range. So again, for those of you that are not like well practiced or studied on Wyckoff methodology, you'll have to do your own research there. But effectively, actually, I can highlight this. We have it on the Arcane Bear website as well, which I will go over. So if you haven't signed up, you can go to the arcanebearwebsite.com. I'm going to have to probably log in here too, so just give me a second. The point being is when we're looking at this idea of scale and variance, or that a particular pattern or signal that we're witnessing can move up repeatedly, effectively, regardless of the size of each spectrum jump. So music is great for this. I'm a multi-instrumentalist. I can pretty much play any musical instrument you give me. And what's interesting is that when you go up this, like the sequence of notes from C to C, you can continue to go up from C to C higher, and further and upwards effectively into what you would call, what most people would view as light. And these are all variations of the same function of vibrant or harmonic vibrancy, I guess would be a kind of a layman's way to put it. There's a bunch of fun PhDs in neuroscience who focus on these types of conversations, understanding, well, how come everyone recognizes the pentatonic scale, and at what scale does that fundamental change exist? They're really fun questions to go over, but what you end up getting are these patterns that repeat over and over and over again. You've seen them like probably most frequently in fractals. Again, this is why we recommend Benoit Mandelbrot's book. But now here we go. I'm logged in now. Okay, so what we want to show you here, I believe it's schematic 4, and these are all, again, trying to match footprints in the wild. So if we go to arcanebear.com, you log in through the den, we go to the Wyckoff trading ranges. What it appears it could be is a function of a reaccumulation above the box. Right here, something like this. So this, I think, is a variation of a 3 peaks and a domed house that we would witness. Again, trying to match them out in the wild, I think, is important. Now, the only difference here is that the way we close above the top of the box, and that's kind of the important part. So let's take a look at Tesla, because for Tesla, it looked kind of confusing too. And this is why I think I made the mistake with Bitcoin, is that this can often look like a reaccumulation above the box. Like, okay, take a look at how had I measured this as a horizontal trading range prior to understanding the 3 peaks and domed house thesis, I would have looked at this trading range effectively as a reaccumulation schematic 3. Yeah, I think that's really important. So if this is a reaccumulation schematic 3, the touch above the box is what we are looking for, whereas it's not that way with the 3 peaks and the domed house. You do not get a touch of the top of the box. You actually get a return all the way down to the previous trading range's spring, and this would have thrown me off. This would have totally, with my Wyckoff process, and I would have thought that this was... I would have got this wrong. I would have thought something was bearish here. And what I love about this is that this is probably generally perceived as a very bearish signal. I bet you if you look back at the time that Ray Dalio made a mistake and when he went to short, the market was probably in a pattern similar to this. This is a very deceiving pattern. Look at Tesla. These both look like rounded tops potentially. In the early days, I would have went short. In the later days, I would have been long, just naturally thinking that this was reaccumulation above the box. Would have gotten a little bit worried as we got down here, obviously, and even more so noticeable in the S&P 500. I had being up here where I thought we would have been at an SOS, and you'll clearly remember thinking this with Bitcoin for part of our explosion, that we would see an SOS here and a move up. This last signature down would have confused the out of me. I would have been so bearish had I not understood the reversal nature of this pattern. Again, when you find this pattern, when it was in the S&P 500, whether it was in Tesla, I'm hoping a bunch of other places we're going to continue to share, but I think there's like 20 on the last website we looked at where they just go through the multiple times. Yeah, 1915 to 1916, 1919, 1919. These are not very long patterns either, but they're reversal patterns. We have only gone up after each of these, and usually very strongly. Here are 2 great options to take a look at. And when I looked at Tesla this morning, again, this is going from $50 to $1,000. So if that was in today's Bitcoin's price, that'd be approximately going from $50,000 to $1 million in one continuous movement upwards. And I actually suspect that this is what we're going to get. This is not probably as volatile and as abrupt as Tesla was here, but definitely something similar to what we saw with the S&P 500, which is just after this moment, in my opinion, even if we go a little bit lower, the bull market is going to go through a process that it has never done before effectively. Now, in 2021, I said no super cycle. Well, this is not a super cycle. This would just be a separate bull market that was coming off the back of the original one. And this is what's so fun about the idea of reaccumulation. A lot of the reasons why people were bearish in the S&P 500 is because it came from $45 up to 150, and when it was back down at 60, people were like, oh my God, it could come back down to 10 or 20, right? Because people become very dramatic in irrational states, and this shows noticeably always throughout history in price of things that we deem valuable as a society. So next fun thing here was, aside from being super bullish, I wanted to kind of break out of the normal here and look at the mutant apes. There's something I really like about this conversation, but right now the floor price for these for a mutant ape alone has broken $100,000. And again, what I think is ridiculous here, and it's what I like about it, so when I say ridiculous, it's actually a positive sentiment, is the nature of identity and community. Each generation and the way they participate with each other in the growth of what should be their economy, I think, has largely not been left to them. I think that this is one of those real deep potentials for people to participate in some of the world's next biggest economy functions. And it should be more in the hands of everyday people. The fact that Twitter effectively is just pretty much so far removed. If you were to just go walk downtown and most United States cities, I'm sure, and take a poll of people that owned stock in the stock market, the percentages are actually probably quite slim. And not that this is important, but you want your society to have a upside from participating within the market that has been grown within their backyard, basically. And they've largely been regulated out of that in a lot of ways. And I think what's unique about something like Mutant Ape is these are really products more than anything. They don't need to be like deemed as security. These are products. You can deem this as a product. It's a membership package. And this is a really unique evolution, again, in the way I think we view identity. A lot of the old memes, the way the internet kind of grew when I was growing up, I was around when we had diode radios to today. Like, this is crazy for me, and I'm sure it is for many of you, but a lot of the generation are growing up with this native to their, like, from ages 5 onwards, they're playing with technology like this. And it's strange to think how they'll adopt identity. And I think this has been one of the most important parts. And my understanding of this sector was seeing this more, okay, if sovereign ownership of money, valuable. Okay, sovereign ownership of identity, that's actually probably a really valuable concept. I don't know what that looks like in the future. I don't know how we get to anywhere, but this feels like a step into that, even if it's somewhat unintentional. This is a part of digital identity, the digital identity of this sector growing up. The people that aped in, I guess the whole meme stock sector to some degree, like the idea of aping into stocks, or like GameStop, the Reddit forums. A lot of people that play on the internet have their own digitally native identity. And this is, I think, another play on that. And it's probably deeply misunderstood in its value. So to see these go up above $100,000 is fantastic. What was my next sentiment there? Oh yeah, okay, back to the charts. I wanted to go back to the charts. So this brings us to, we're just going to kind of scroll through. Now, I'm largely use Bitcoin as the center thesis for all of our technical analysis, because most of our interest lies in the venture capital space, and it can be extraordinarily volatile. So just a quick look at Ethereum to see where we are, is their bullish setups here. And again, what I think we're witnessing is a version of a three-peaked and dome house. Now, there's a lot more volatility in Ethereum, so we could see a quick spike down again, right? No reason to bet on that. I think the limited potential for downside should just be chewed up by consistent asset acquisition. I think any time in life you should really budget investing as a long-term thesis. It just makes sense. So Ethereum is actually looking quite strong as well. It's not as clear here, and this is what I like about Bitcoin. Like, this looks like a very clear signal to me. But because Bitcoin's leading the rest of the market, I suspect what we're seeing is strong signals both in Ethereum, even in Avalanche here. What appears to be another large reaccumulation channel is taking place. So I think patience here. Part of this comes down to our sentiments on the market as a whole. So it's Tuesday. We've seen not a strong reaction in the S&P 500, but we have to remember that largely inflation is a death of the currency. Effectively, or through the increase of the money supply, you effectively make it worth less and less. I'm sure this is common knowledge amongst anyone listening to this channel, because I deem you all relatively up to speed with the way things are working. But because of this, it's very likely that as we see a separation between what's a valued asset and what's just this kind of hot potato liability we call currency throughout the process, it's going to be a revisit of the question of what does money mean. And money, or how you store wealth, has been done in a number of ways through productive businesses, physical properties, just purely physical assets like gold, silver, things that have a base function there as well, obviously like copper. So because most wealth is held not just in like a gold or a silver, it's, for a company that drills for oil, their wealth is largely also held in cash, I'm sure. But we have to remember that if they want to escape from the currency, if they think it's a liability, then they're going to be moving into even more assets. So it's likely that the asset growth period is not done here, because I do not believe that basically the devaluation over the next decade of the dollar is done. And when we see it really start to accelerate from that like 90% loss to 100% loss, that last bit is where it usually really kicks everyone, because it becomes very apparent that the some type of that US dollar might not be worth anything. Do I think we'll see that in the next 2 or 3 years? No, probably not. But just consistent loss of faith here in the governance and financial system seems likely. Shits them. Yeah, that's what this sounds like. Anyways, I just thought that was fun. Oh yes, Near protocol. I really like the way Near is setting up here too. If you were in the private den, you'll have seen Bear Den Jerry's share here. I'm not even going to draw it in, but there's reason to believe that this is actually a Livermore widening megaphone pattern. So if you're savvy enough to go do that homework, the Livermore rising megaphone pattern, it's one that is worth researching. The outcome is extraordinarily valuable. So if Bear Den Jerry's right here, and I have reason to believe that this setup actually is looking like that, I would want to double check back in and make sure all the volume signatures follow the Livermore pattern, but it looks like it does. You can see a very strong down signal here, and then followed by an up. I suspect that you're going to see maybe when these break out, they can break out monumentally. That was when ETH went from $340 to where we are today. It broke out of a widening megaphone pattern. So Near here could be on a potential to go into like Astro mode. We actually saw the same thing with Solana when it was around a few dollars. These can be like Astro mode when you see the widening megaphone pattern. So keep an eye on Near, by the way, as well. Because dang, when those patterns form properly. So again, if you're in the mood to do the homework, double check all the volume signatures alongside the Jesse Livermore widening megaphone pattern. On that, we'll keep that discussion in the private den for now. Just wanted to go live, try to keep it simple. You guys are saying mic volume is very low. I don't know how that could be. It looks like it's giving me red here on some of it. Check 1 2 1 2. I don't know. Maybe I gotta push one of the buttons on here. No, that's for that. It should be all the way up to the top too. Well, I don't know. We'll figure this out here. I think it sounds silky smooth. I listened to it back. I guess one of the things too that's important is if I'm talking quietly and you want to hear something, you'll actually probably listen a little bit more deeply and probably get a better result because of it. Your conscious attention and focus as I start to get quieter on things, especially if they sound like they might be important. Anyways, let's deal with the Arcane Bear. Thanks for joining us today. Official. Today I go take my photo for my Costa Rican identity. That's pretty ridiculous. I hope to share more moments in the future as we discover and have conversations about new passports and general mobility and sovereign ownership of self. Again, I think that this identity conversation it goes beyond just social identity. I think that there's a huge need for sovereign ownership of reputation and identity as well, and a way to build that. And I think that this technology will offer us that. So as a side point, have a great afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really excited about this. I mean, there's so much room for speculation. Oh yeah, there was one thing we could actually go over here. I thought that might fit the bill. There we go. Yes, we're going to take a look at the bottom. Well, I think we finally reached a little bit of a bottom here for Polis. First off, I want to recognize the mistake I made, which was by being bullish anywhere near the beginning of a project. Even still, shouldn't be super bullish. And it also then highlights the importance of why I think structuring executions over time just makes the most sense, because you should find conviction throughout time. And this is best done by being patient most often. But even still, because we're down like 70 to 80% on Polis. Yeah, 82% Jeebus Poopa. But that consistent acquisition has also then brought the total price down. So it's not a huge deal. Effectively, the reason why showing up so frequently to any practice is important is because you're going to make mistakes. Right, like even still, like I've been playing the drum kit for 15 years. If I go sit down and practice, I know I'm going to make some mistakes. But the whole goal is to make it so that mostly when you make mistakes, they're largely unnoticeable. Here, when you make mistakes, you want to keep them as unnoticeable as possible, which is how you always measure risk, which is best done through time. Anyways, so I thought this was fun. But what's important here, I think, is actually what's taking place on the RSI. So it looks to me that we are making an approximate low here. Let's actually get the price more noticeable. And we'll close this one up a little bit here. Yeah, there we go. So this looks like divergence to me. So, boom. We see a rising price bottom, which is good. So technically you'd want this to be a little bit more inverted. Like if it did this here, we'd be even happier. And I bet you if we actually put the wicks on, we're going to see a bit more data here. Yeah, there we go. So this flattened bottom of Polis right now, effectively of price, yeah, pretty much flat with the RSI here. And what I like about this is, we see so much bullish momentum in other areas of the market. Do we find it in something as abstract as the gaming market? And I think very strongly here that's what we're seeing. We saw a strong accumulation come in, limited selling, and then our prices still ended up just a bit higher than where we were. So I think that's the approximate bottom here. That's my guess. Again, we could still see some huge slip in emotional sentiment across the board, but barring that, I think that was the bottom. I think this is it. I think we're pretty much going to see only up in most of these assets for quite some time, based off that larger thesis that Bitcoin's kind of really leading the way here. And as Bitcoin's liquidity and its the palpable difference that it makes in functionality of like peer-to-peer choice money, stuff is really going to start to take off, because the dying of an old system happens slow at first and then all of a sudden real fast. I don't postulate this happens in the next year or two, but this setup to me looks like once Bitcoin does that, in the following years to come, in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see such a massive degradation of the confidence in traditional currency systems and the people that govern and regulate those things, just because they don't deserve our faith anymore, or confidence. Probably never deserved our faith. Confidence maybe, but yeah. So I think that will become noticeable, and because of that, what's most exciting, again, even if Bitcoin does have the opportunity to go lower, even if some of these assets have the opportunity to go a little bit lower, I believe the turnaround is going to be so quick and staggering that effectively it's still one of the greatest opportunities to enter this sector that we'll have seen, because I suspect we're going to see a multi-year move up afterwards, and that's, I think, the most exciting part about this particular style of trading range. Looks like it's super bearish, boom, boom, and then what you get is a multi-year bull run afterwards. And with Tesla here, And again, we're seeing what I believe to be approximate bottoms here on a bunch of assets as well. Even stronger setups in things like Near, Avalanche, Luna, Ethereum potentially as well here looked very strong, although there's a bunch of liquid supply still unaccounted for is one of the things. In any asset, really, if we know there's a few percent of supply that could just come onto the market, like, that's the price of playing the game. Anyways, thank you guys all for joining us today. I will see you on the next episode. Keep it simple and keep showing up. You'll do well. Boom.